Whether you love or hate the game, I think most of us can agree that Halo Infinite's art style is absolutely stunning. It feels very reminiscent of that classic art style that we all used to love, but still manages to stand out in its own unique way. Overall, its style definitely seems closest to Reach, but with a much less gritty tone. And this is definitely the most visible through the game's armour. I'm not just talking about the Mark 5B armour core, of course. You can see inspiration from Halo Reach and from various other Halo games with a lot of the armour present within Halo Infinite. And I think it's really fun how much variety the game provides in terms of the style of the different armour pieces that are available. There's a lot of classic pieces and a lot that remind me of classic pieces, and then there's some really cool new stuff too. And even some fun wacky cosmetics, so there truly is something for everyone when it comes to the Spartan customization in this game. But one thing that's always interested me is the game's concept art and seeing the process as of how that armour was created. We have spoken about some of the game's concept art in the past, and I think that was back before Season 3, so I thought it was about time that we revisited the subject. There was a few things in that last one that I definitely wish I'd spoken about a little bit more, and there's definitely some new concept art since then that looks pretty damn cool. So today we'll once again be talking about various concept art for Halo Infinite, and without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight in. All of the armour that I'll be looking at today is either visible in the Art of Halo Infinite Boook, or over on Artstation, and any of the images that I use I will leave a link to so you can check them out for yourself. First of all, I want to revisit some of my favourite concept art for the game, and that's some of the pieces for the Rakshasa core. Personally, I think Rakshasa is some of the most underrated armour in the game, but when you look at the concept art, oh my god, there is so much missed potential here. On this page you can see a few different pieces that were designed for the armour, and a lot of these, funnily enough, did make their way into the game in some capacity. But unfortunately, ones like this poncho or this scarf piece never made their way in. There's also a really cool ghillie suit one here, and there was a few things like that designed for the core. These few here definitely remind me much more of the Halo 4, Halo 5 kind of style, mostly just because of how the undersuit looks, but the helmets themselves look super interesting. The second one along from the left, the helmet kind of reminds me of that of a Marines, and the middle one looks somewhat similar to Locke's. And personally, I've always thought if they were going to add Locke's armor to Infinite in some capacity, I think Rakshasa would have been the perfect core. There's also this really interesting piece that sort of breaks the armor down. In the top left corner, you can see the helmet broken up into separate pieces. And it makes me wonder if the original intention here could have been to do something similar to a lot of the new helmets, where you have like a base helmet and then the attachment makes it look completely different. A bit like the extender helmet on Mirage. We have a few more here as well, and again you can see some of that ghillie suit type design, definitely some that look a bit more Marine-esque. I actually really like the two on the right side. And again, this middle one with this cool like poncho-esque design, it looks absolutely insane. I also like the little emblem that is on the leg there. It does make me wish we had the option to place emblems on different regions of our armor. And here's some concepts for a bunch of different helmets that were designed for Rakshasa. You can see the top two in the middle look almost reminiscent of the Mark 7, almost like this core was going to get its own version of the Mark 7. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but the top left one kinda looks a bit like Volant, and the one underneath again reminds me of Locke's Hunter helmet. But there's some really cool helmet designs here. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the concept art for Mirage. Now, there isn't as much here that I found that I really wanted to discuss, however it is interesting seeing some of the design changes that were made, even if some of these are on a smaller scale. On the artwork shown here, you can see the big Infinity text along the chest piece and also some of the paint over the armour, and it would be kinda cool to have this on the Mirage core. Of course, I can see why something like this wouldn't be. I know a reason a lot of people didn't like certain armors in prior Halo games if they had sort of paint or text on them, is it makes them feel a bit more personal to that specific character rather than the player themselves. But like I mentioned a little bit earlier on, it would be cool to be able to put emblems and stuff like that in different regions of our armor. And here we've got a bunch of different helmet attachment designs for Mirage, some of which look very unique. I would absolutely love to get more helmet attachments in the future. Didn't really feel like we got too many this season, but some of these designs are really quite nice. Up next we have some various designs for the Hazmat armor core, and I definitely think these are some very early concepts as the finished product did end up looking quite different. However, you can still see some elements from these early designs that were translated to the game, like the blue one towards the left is wearing a helmet that very clearly resembles Steelheart. I think some of these concepts are actually awesome, and I would really like us to get a helmet that resembles that one on the right. But in this next piece, you can see the design really start to take shape. And we've got a few different concepts there at the end, and another one that kinda resembles the Mark 7. I also love with the notes how they really fit into the armor's story, like just having the extra rubber pads for when a Spartan is kneeling down, or the flood prevention flamethrower on the wrist. And here we have the final finished design for Hazmat, and I know it's not a super popular core, but I do think it's still a pretty cool one. We do have some other art here that shows some different armors that were designed. Again, the one on the right resembles what I'm assuming became Steelheart, and the one in the middle having a similar shape to that of the Mark 7. We've got some more concepts for helmets here, and the bottom one and the top one definitely ended up becoming Latchpoint and Farkas. I just really love seeing how these armors took shape through the artwork. Hazmat is definitely one that I think should be explored more in the future, especially with the introduction of the Flood cosmetics this season. I think it's weird that it wasn't paired up with some new additions to the Hazmat core. I mean, granted, I know we do have cross-core helmets now, but still, I think overall that armor deserved a bit more attention just to pair up with those new Flood pieces. And while we're on the topic, we might as well take a look at some of the Flood armor concept designs. The Flood armor itself ended up being very popular this season, and it's cool to see what sort of stuff actually influenced the design choices they made while designing these new Flood Spartan armor pieces. It's interesting to see the one on the far right, which I think definitely resembles Cat, paired up with a flood-infected prosthetic, so it does make me wonder, was this intended to always just be armor pieces for the Mark 5, or maybe its own core? But then we did also end up with a couple of different flood armor kits, so it could have just been planned to be one of them. I mean, again, this is just concept art, so it doesn't really mean too much on whether or not they plan to do it as a core, but still, I think it's interesting to think about. And here we have even more armor pieces that were designed. I think the one on the far right again is super interesting. I really like the very spiky look it's got going on. And the one just to the left of it reminds me much more of how the Flood looked in Halo 2. This next piece isn't really for armor, but rather some amazing weapon model designs for the Bulldog. You can see there is a couple of Flood ones on here which were adapted. Granted, I don't think they ended up as visually interesting as some of the artwork here, and I just want to say I would absolutely love to see this Forerunner one make its way into the game. Also, the Zombie Hunter one in the bottom left, that one is phenomenal. Next, I want to jump over to the art book and have a look at some of the things in there, like these various attachment designs for the Mark 7 core. You can see there's some designed here for the boots, for the legs, and even various backpack designs, which I think would have been very interesting to see. I definitely think something like Rikshasa would have benefited from that, as I know one complaint that a lot of people had is that there isn't really any armor on the back, so maybe implementing something like this would solve that issue, and would also really help the players that want to cosplay as an ODST. And again, you can see even more of these backpack designs here, some of which look super interesting. Next, we have a ton of different Mark 7 helmet concepts, and a lot of which you can see that they have been adapted into the game. Some early designs of ISR, Anubis, Enigma, and a few more. You'll also notice on the bottom left, that is the helmet that I believe belongs to Kai in the Halo TV series, which is actually finally coming to the game. And we have that amazing Warrior Gen 3 concept, which I know a lot of fans are begging for. We've got even more helmet concepts here. You can see War Master and Soldier straight away. Pretty much every helmet on this page I would love to see added to the game too. There's just so much untapped potential with some of these designs. We also have this intriguing concept for this robot. Obviously, there has been a lot of circulating rumours on whether or not we will receive a robot armor core at some point, and this could be what it looks like if we ever do receive one. Personally, I'm not opposed to a robot core. I think this design actually looks great, but I am curious to hear what everyone else has to say. And then here we have some concepts for the Mark 4. I know this is something that a lot of fans want, and I know a lot of people don't want a repeat of the Mark 5 where it's turned into a kit. I don't know whether or not this was actually being designed as an armor core or more so just a proof of concept. I do think this may have just been used to show how a core system could work rather than being a core design itself. But there is a pretty high probability that we do receive more cores in the future, and who knows, one of those could be the Mark IV, and I definitely hope to see some of these armor designs make their way into the finished product. Moving back over to some of the stuff I found on Artstation, here we have some designs for the Deadeye helmet, which did obviously make its way into the game, but it's cool to see the process that it went through before we ended up with the version that we have. Honestly, some of these concepts could be added as completely different versions of the helmet, and I would not be mad about it at all. And then to close things off, we have some relatively new stuff, like concept art for the Winter Knight helmet, which will be releasing in the Winter Contingency 3 operation later this season. And here you can see some of the concept for that helmet and actually the chest piece that will also be included in the operation. Honestly, I know this one's probably going to have a few people that dislike it. I just think it's a super cool concept, the way that they basically turn Santa's head into a Spartan helmet. and it looks good. There's a few other design choices here. In this version, the helmet definitely looks a bit more tactical, but I think also resembles a face a little bit more. It's kind of weird. Still great though. And here's also some concepts for some other Christmas themed helmets. I think the snowman one on the very end looks hilarious. I definitely think that should be added. Same with the reindeer one, and the star one I don't even think looks like super Christmassy or anything. I think that's just a nice helmet design. But that's pretty much all I've got time to talk about today. There is likely a lot of concept art for this game that I have not touched on, and if you do want to see me cover more in the future, let me know. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about the customization and the armor in general, so seeing the process of how it was made and concepts for armors that never made the way into the game, or not yet at least, I think is a really fun topic. But let me know what you all think down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.